everyone, and welcome to the channel. It's your boy Trevor from the Anima Effect, and today we're going to be doing a little bit different of a video. We're not going to be talking about the Anima Effect, we're going to be talking about Berried Alive, and one of my favorite songs of theirs, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into the lyrics and discussing a lot of the themes and ideas behind them, and sort of use that as a canvas to discuss the art of songwriting. The song we're going to be talking about today is called Sippin on Mercury. And it was released last year on September 10th of 2021. So if you're unfamiliar with the group, to shortly summarize what they're about, I would describe them as a progressive metal power couple. That incorporates elements of electronic dance music and trap and dubstep and many other popular genres to sort of innovate the traditional, aspect of metal. I wouldn't even really consider their new material metal at all anymore. They just have occasionally heavy sections and whatnot, but they're just more of an avant-garde group. I think that's what they describe themselves as these days. They're primarily known for their very intense, in-your-face guitar riffs, insane guitar solos with, octave tapping, arpeggiated melodies, their intense confrontational lyrics, and very intense screamed vocals provided by Charles, as well as a lot more singing in their later material now, as well as their very groovy melodic bass lines provided by Kaylee. Charles is known for his unique approach to both songwriting, playing guitar, and using modern technology to innovate their production. He uses a Line 6 HD pod, a Line 6 pod HD 500X to build a lot of his tones and to use his effects like the digital wah-wah pedal and a lot of the crazy octavizers and stuff that you hear. Just a lot of really cool, unique stuff that not a lot of people are doing. His wife Kaylee has a very heavy hand in conceptualizing their artwork. From what I understand, she does a lot of the drawings herself, or at least the early sketch designs and stuff for their clothing, their merchandise. I think she's very inspired and influenced by fashion, and she's a huge part of the reason why Berried Alive has become so known for having such unique and interesting clothes and stuff for people. This is reflected in their vast plethora of signature merchandise collections ranging from t-shirts, shorts, sweatpants, crop tops, jackets, hoodies, dresses, and more. And although she does not sing in any of their music, she also writes a lot of the lyrics and songs for the band. Especially on their most recent material, from what I understand, she's been having a much heavier hand in the writing process and writing melodies and a lot of the lyrics too. And so I would say what they're most notable for, their signature gimmick, if you will, would be their artwork and their song titles and their clothing line, which emphasizes violent yet playfully silly fruit-based puns and pop culture references. Sippin on Mercury was released just 2 months after their full-length album, The Mixtape, which was released on July 9th, 2021. It seemed clear Charles still had some leftover ideas, thoughts, and feelings from the writing process of that album, based not only on the expediency of its release, but also there was a clear indication of musical and lyrical motifs featured in this song that are delineated from the song Strawberry Serenity off of the Mixtape. In the past, the band has referred to songs like this as buddy songs. Essentially, they take a section of an old song or a melodic idea and resample it or repurpose it into a lo-fi acoustic version of the idea to represent it in a more intimate fashion. We saw this first in their song Dry Hump, which was an acoustic version of a section from their popular song Hump from their first album, Soul Sucker. They did this again with their song Preserves, which is an acoustic version of a section from When Guidance Leaves from their second album, Fool's Gold. The song Ever Under is a buddy song to No One Is Listening, also from the Fool's Gold album, and Sippin on Mercury continues this tradition. In my humble opinion, it's resulted in one of their most relatable, beautifully dark songs they've ever released. Sippin on Mercury is a masterclass in songwriting because of its powerfully evocative melodies and relatable lyrics. The song demonstrates what happens when chord progressions, melodic motifs, and lyrical themes come together in a way that transcends the music. The song is undeniably evocative, especially if you've ever suffered from low self-esteem or depression, which, if we're being entirely honest, after this pandemic, I think that covers most people on this planet. Something that makes their songwriting and storytelling so brilliant, they can stir such emotional responses from their listeners by turning their songs into an immersive vehicle for introspection and self-reflection. Like the rest of the Buddy songs, they create a much more intimate atmosphere by taking a more minimalist approach to their production, which in essence, they strip back the loud, heavy, distorted guitars, maybe just have acoustic or lo-fi versions of their melodies or leads, and they create a lot more space in the production for the vocals to shine through. I personally really love these Buddy songs because they showcase how talented the group is at using motifs, creating emotionally charged tension, and build an atmosphere of vulnerability with their audience. Their choice of chord progressions and melodic arrangements really are used to serve those ideas and those emotional intentions of expression. Not to mention their skillful ability to write universally relatable lyrics. In my opinion, it's something that really gets overlooked when people talk about Berried Alive. Typically, when people talk about Berried Alive, the first thing that comes to mind about the band is Charles' highly innovative and uniquely explosive style of guitar work. However, I think there's a lot of value in discussing just what makes their songs so well written and relatable by analyzing the lyrics and diving into the potential interpretations of the meanings behind their lyrics and the inspiration behind the lyrics. I hope that sounds fun to you because even though the song is only 3.5 minutes long, there is a lot to discuss. So the opening of the song starts with a very somber sounding bell, very light percussion, and Charles' voice exclusively. Then slowly the full production starts to come into focus as it reintroduces the hook from Strawberry Serenity, as a way of not only indicating that this is once again going to be a Buddy song, but also to introduce the central theme of the song lyrically. Let's take a moment to look at the lyrics.
Been sipping on Mercury. Been sipping on Mercury. Been sipping on Mercury. Sucking on lead. All out of Flintstones, taking killer pills instead. Been sipping on Mercury. Been sipping on Mercury. I sprouted these roots, keep me grounded in bed. Did it all by the book. How am I not dead?
The lyrics here leave us with the impression of being overwhelmed with self-induced anxiety as a result of taking on an impossible workload, and the consequences have resulted in the loss of self-esteem and self-worth. I interpreted the phrase "sippin' on Mercury" as a metaphor for indulging in negative thoughts and opinions of oneself. This is a textbook form of self-harm, and the lyrics for the hook here express that very astutely. Also, I really appreciate the references to those old Flintstone vitamins because as a 90s kid I used to take those as well. And even though it's a little silly and cute and endearing, it also is still a pretty good metaphor for basically saying, instead of doing what's good for me and my body and my mental health, I'm choosing to entertain negative thoughts and feelings instead. The second time around when he says, I sprouted these roots, keep me crowded in bed, did it all by the book, how am I not dead? To me, like that's a reference to the responsibilities or the expectations he's come to create for himself as a musician and recording artist, whose mission is to consistently crank out new music in order to sustain and grow their audience. Between recording all the time, giving guitar lessons, and doing most of his audio production by himself, the man probably gets very little sleep. Him and Kaylee, I'm sure. The final line is reflective of that when he says, I did it all by the book, how am I not dead? He's essentially saying, I worked incredibly hard day and night for years on end to carve out a path for myself to the point that it almost killed him. I followed the American dream, I did what they said, I busted my ass, and it should have killed me. The reason this is universally relatable and what makes the song so brilliant is because you don't have to be a fellow musician or a struggling artist to relate to that sentiment. Honestly, who hasn't felt this way in their life? Most of us are overworked, underpaid, and exhausted with just trying to survive. There is this lie that's often sold to us in this extremely capitalistic society. It's the lie of meritocracy, that if we just keep our head down and work as hard as we can for most of our adult life, if we do that, then eventually, maybe someday, it will pay off and we will be rewarded with success and we deserve based on our talents and the merits of our hard work. which may be true for some, for those that are lucky enough, but for many it's a false hope. While the concept of meritocracy or the American dream in general is at best an empty platitude at this point, and at worst it's a complete and utter lie, this is exactly why we love stories of self-made success like Charles and Kaylee Caswell. Their journey from an unknown, struggling online artist to widespread, celebrated internet sensation is inspirational to most people, because who doesn't love a story like that, right? Very often the struggle of life is seen as a rite of passage in order to lay our claim to fame and success, and it's a story many of us would like to be able to one day tell about ourselves. The central theme here is that essentially every word of this hook is deeply relatable to most people, and within those 4 lines, the opening 32 seconds of the song, we already have a plethora of themes that are extremely indicative of the human experience.
Sipping on Mercury while I space 2 rings of Saturn, burning moonlights with the sun till I can't repeat the pattern. I was toasting with the stars, totally fine with all the hazards. Yet my biggest mistake so far was ever believing that I even mattered. Sipping on Mercury while I'm sucking on some lead. Gotta leave Earth urgently, but I can't seem to get out of bed. There goes the clock, I'll just pretend I never heard it. I wish these walls could talk, my wish came true, they said I'm worthless.
There's a lot to unpack here, but let's get into it. Generally, I see this first verse as a very well-written metaphor for active daydreaming, having your head in the clouds or stars, understanding that they are unrealistic, and accepting the consequences of pursuing those dreams. Dreams which often lead to disappointment, self-ridicule, failure, and self-loathing. I also enjoyed that little line, the reference to Rings of Saturn. So they did an epic collab track with them called Dads. I thought including the reference was a cute, smart way of referencing the band, and also still continuing with the cosmic themes of and the metaphor of his ambitions of becoming a self-made star. This metaphor is also articulated when he says, "I was toasting with the stars, totally fine with all the hazards, yet my biggest mistake so far was ever believing that I even mattered." The hazards being discussed in this first line here are the physical and mental toll on his body and mind for putting himself through countless hours of hard work, writing, recording, practicing, filming, the weight of deadlines looming over his head, and subsequently the damage to his self-esteem and self-worth that can happen from putting yourself out there online, no matter who you are, what you do, and how successful or hard you work or how talented you are. People will still hate on you, and it sucks to be vulnerable and to experience that. There are natural consequences of tying that sense of self to the success of your music, which can only realistically be measured in sales, stream numbers, social media interaction, and video view counts. So anyone in the music industry can attest to the constant struggle of maintaining and growing a dedicated audience so that you can one day survive off your work instead of having to put those ambitions aside for some day job that would deprive you of the ability to create the art that you want to create. This brings us to the second half of that line, which is once again a textbook example of what chronic depression and low self-esteem looks like. To paint you guys a picture of how depression and low self-esteem influences our patterns of thought, I'll share something that I learned in one of my psychology classes last semester. Depression is defined in the DSM-5 as a common and serious mood disorder. Those who suffer from depression experience persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness and lose interest in activities that they once enjoyed. Aside from the emotional problems caused by depression, individuals can also present with a physical symptom such as chronic pain or digestive issues. So when people experience depression for long enough, this can deeply influence their sense of self-esteem. An individual with low self-esteem is much more likely to respond to failure or hardship or negativity in a much more self-destructive way. They are more likely to blame themselves and make more grandiose judgments about themselves and their situations. They are more likely to feel as if there's no coming back from something that they might otherwise seem to be trivial or no big deal compared to someone with higher self-esteem. They are more likely to essentialize the event and make statements like, "This happened because I am a bad person and this will always happen," or "I'm never going to be successful because I am unworthy and I will never be able to change that." Low self-esteem can even influence our memory and warp the way we remember certain events in our life. That can even make us forget positive events and moments altogether. Another example of their lyrics that represent the idea, or this idea, would be on a buddy song to this one, Strawberry Serenity, when he says, "Scratched up my memories, don't play the good parts, I'm detached from reality, too late to restart." In these two lyrics, he perfectly illustrates both the nature in which self-esteem influences our memories and our perception of reality. So when Charles says, "I wish these walls could talk, my wish came true, they said I'm worthless," he's representing symptoms of low self-esteem. The walls represent his subconscious, attacking his sense of self-worth in a very clear but subtle way. And this is why every time I listen to the song, I get such a deep stirring in the pit of my stomach, because I know exactly how this feels. I do this to myself all the time. Sometimes something negative will happen. It could be a small failure, like not getting enough done in any given day, or someone might say something rude to me online, and that's all it takes. My mind will dwell on that negativity, usually self-induced, and I will spiral until I end up making harsh, unwarranted criticism of myself. This is what makes not only the song so good, but the entire Berried Alive discography good as well, because the music that they write and the stories that they tell are deeply relatable, deeply honest, deeply authentic, and deeply flawed, which results in something deeply human, which I think a lot of artists struggle to do. And it's kind of ironic because they use so much digital techniques and tones and strategies to make their production really unique, and it seems so removed from organic, old school, traditional recorded music that they end up still having a much more humanized product because of their lyrical content and their storytelling. So, also, I think we should just take a moment to talk about how underappreciated Kaylee is, because it turns out Kaylee is the one who wrote those iconic and brilliant lyrics to Strawberry Serenity. I was informed by Charles after sending him the first draft to the script that Strawberry Serenity was the first song that they worked on together. She wrote the lyrics and the music for that song. Lemon Drop, Sit There Like a Lemon, and some new songs that have yet to be released. Kaylee's actually, at the time of writing that may have been true, but I think some of those songs have dropped, like Paranoid, Melancholy, and Poison Berry. I think she wrote a lot of those lyrics too. Kaylee's contributions are yet another key element of Berried Alive that often gets overlooked due to Charles' guitar playing. Not only does she play the incredibly wicked bass parts that Charles comes up with, and oftentimes write her own bass lines these days, I think, but she also writes lyrics, music, draws designs for the clothing, envisions their artwork, handles a huge portion of their social media, which is a full-time job in and of itself, and is a core component to making Berried Alive Berried Alive. Instead of it just being Charles' solo music, which is how a lot of people refer to or treat the project. And also, I remember seeing her make a post on social media a long time ago about how Berried Alive has been in the works since 2010 or 11, and from the very beginning, she had a vision of having these bright, colorful, fruity, clothing, items and merchandise, and after 10 years, 12 years or something of grinding, she helped make that a reality. Charles just knew he wanted to play crazy cool music by him, that he didn't have to rely on a band for, and Kaylee came up with a lot of the business aspect and the marketing and the imagery of what Berried Alive is. My point here being that Kaylee brings a lot to the table that makes Berried Alive what they are, and she deserves to be recognized for that fact. Now we've come to the final verse, the climactic conclusion of this roller coaster of a song, and before continuing, I would like to give the audience one final content warning. Suicidal ideation will be discussed in this next part of the video.
down, I really needed breakthrough. Take me out cause I'm way too afraid to. Breaking down, I just can't seem to grow strong. Haven't felt love for myself in so long. I can tell that this might be my last song.
Let's start with the first piece, the line that says, "Blow my brains to my cranium," which is another lyric lifted from Strawberry Serenity. The full lyric from that song is, "Blow my brains to my cranium and sell it as art." And honestly, I could have written an entire essay just about that line alone, mostly because it says volumes about what it means to be an artist today in this digital economy. The most generalized way I can interpret and describe this lyric is like this. As artists, we often put ourselves through literal hell in order to get our work done and released in a timely fashion, and many times just the creative process alone can be an extremely emotionally taxing process, especially if you are writing and singing about deeply personal experiences, feelings, and emotional turmoil. Many artists draw from personal experiences, but few do that as authentically and as honestly as Charles and Kaylee Caswell. This process in and of itself can make a person feel incredibly vulnerable when they do this, and when their work is met with ridicule or criticism or misunderstanding, or in the case of Berried Alive, outright contempt and hatred. It can leave an artist feeling as if they could literally lose their life working so hard, and it still wouldn't be good enough for certain people. When he says, "Blow my brains to my cranium and sell it as art," essentially I think this line is saying that the artistic process can be so personal and painful that it feels like that is exactly what we're doing. Like we're sharing our most inner thoughts and feelings and emotions and putting that on display to sell to an audience. Even when we do that for many people, it still won't be good enough. The final lines, "Breaking down, I just can't seem to grow strong. I haven't felt love for myself in so long. I can't tell that this might be my last song," always hit really hard for me for a myriad of reasons. It reminds me of Bo Burnham's hinting at suicidal ideation throughout the entirety of his latest special by cutting every song in sequence short. And not only can I relate to these feelings in a very deep and personal way, but I can tell how real these feelings must have been for him at the time of writing it. Because once again, the first half of this section is almost straight out of a textbook about depression. Not feeling love for yourself is a hallmark of depression and low self-esteem. I imagine that these feelings go deeper than just a reaction to the undue hatred the band had been subjected to. To me, this seems to be a part of a broader sense of inner struggle that maybe both Charles and Kaylee have been dealing with for a long time, and my heart truly feels for them. It's very hard to love yourself when you're surrounded by negativity and you're already highly critical of yourself. The hatred begins to validate your own internal insecurities, and you begin only to see those things you don't like about yourself, and what is being described here is that vicious cycle of chronic depression. With permission from Charles, I would like to read to you guys what the man said about the process from himself after I was texting him after he reviewed the first draft of the script. "Whether it's good or bad results, I always feel like I didn't do a good enough job, and I have a really hard time struggling with being content and genuinely proud to just have accomplished something. That's why I keep writing and move on to the next thing to distract from the emotion and to give me something else to believe in and stay looking ahead to." So it's not even a metaphor at this point in the song, it's just pure unfiltered honesty. And as an artist, I know never to interpret lyrics literally, because many times what we write are just exaggerated, passing feelings used to weave a narrative and tell a good story. But however, these lyrics leave me with the impression that this song was much more about releasing the worst emotions Charles had left over from the wave of harassment they endured during the process of making the mixtape and before that. So it makes sense to me now why this song was left out of the mixtape, because thematically it's a much darker conclusion than Strawberry Serenity or the mixtape provides us with. It makes me think of what Charles said on the Riff Hard podcast, where he described a meditation process where you are imagining your thoughts and your ideas as logs. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, all floating in a river. And you let those bad thoughts just go and pass by. So that way you think about those negative thoughts, you acknowledge them, you feel them, and then you let them pass. So that way they don't end up owning you and blocking the path for good thoughts and ideas to flow. I think the song was a way for Charles to let those negative thoughts and ideas pass. Depression, low self-esteem, thoughts of self-harm, they're all just feelings passing down the river so he can grow past everything. The song is the river for these thoughts to resolve and to allow him to move on. And I'm not saying that my interpretation is correct or that I know what Charles was thinking and feeling as he wrote this. All I can do is interpret the work and make my own inferences based off of the year of lessons that I got to know him and talk to him about a lot of the things that he's gone through and the communications that I've had with him through text while writing the script. As the audience, we can never truly know what's in the artist's mind or head, but the best songwriters write lyrics that are broad enough that you don't have to guess. The lyrics speak for themselves, and they transcend the music in a way that tells a very real, very digestible, and a very relatable, authentically human experience. To conclude today's video, I want to make one final point about the art of songwriting. The best songwriter creates an atmosphere where the listening experience is merely a vehicle for introspection, self-reflection, emotional release, and a sense of interconnectedness through our shared story of struggle, suffering, pain, joy, loss, and the potential to be something more than what you are. Berried Alive does that to an extent that few artists can parallel. Not just on this song, but consistently throughout their entire discography. It's the reason I have been a dedicated fan since 2017, and honestly I could sit here and go over all of the different lyrics in their songs that demonstrate these points, but I don't think I need to at this point. Their music speaks for itself, and the best songs, the best art doesn't have to be explained. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you aren't already a massive Berried Alive fan, you probably are, because why else would you click this video? I'm like nobody. I hope you'll check them out, and for those of you who are watching this because you already are a massive fan, I hope that the insight I have provided for you today will perhaps give you more perspective when listening to this song, and maybe some of their other songs too. Or maybe even just serve as a reminder to pay a little bit more attention to the lyrics and the ideas being discussed in their music, because this band truly is a lot more than just crazy guitar riffs and solos, and Charles isn't the only one that makes it what it is. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, hit the bell for notifications when I upload if you like us that much. Over to my left or around me are other videos. You can check out the collab I did with him here, my solo project, Enter the Animus. You can check out our collabs here for the Anima Effect. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.